Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it's Thursday, which means we have another redraft today. We have done 4 redrafts up until this point, starting in 2020, the last week's being 2017. So today we are looking at the 2016 draft, or otherwise known as the Austin Matthews draft. This draft was very solid. Here's the original order. And with Matthews, Laine, Dubois, Puljujarvi, Juolevi, Tkachuk, Keller, Nylander, but Alex Nylander, Sergachev, and Tyson Jost. There is a bunch of guys that could make this top 10 redraft. Some honorable mentions: Sergachev, Chychrun, even a PLD before this year, assuming this year's a fluke. You could argue for him. Kyrou, Hagel, Gustafsson, and Connor Ingram. Gustafsson and Ingram just can't really go with goalies because they haven't really had that much of a track record. But all those other guys, you could make a strong case. This draft was fantastic. It kind of gets overlooked because 2015, which will be next week's, was so goddamn good. But without further ado, let's get into it. At 10th overall, the Colorado Avalanche initially selected Tyson Jost. Sure, they want that one back, and I have them taking Philip Hronek. Some people might scream about recency bias with this, but I honestly disagree. You look at him in Detroit, he walked into the league at like 20 years old in 2018, 2019. Right off the bat was a solid 40-point defenseman, and then after that, for like 3 or 4 years, he was Detroit's number one, and that was back when Detroit absolutely sucked, so he didn't have these amazing advanced analytics or these high point totals, but he was around the 45 to 50-point guy, pretty healthy throughout his entire career besides last year. I think that now on a team like the Vancouver Canucks, he might not be a legit number one on an actual high-level playoff team, but now that he's on the Vancouver Canucks, we're seeing how fantastic he's playing. He has 36 points in 50 games with Quinn Hughes, just a very, very good, reliable number two. Not a top 15 defenseman in the entire NHL, but definitely a guy that is between 20 and 35 in my opinion. And I think going forward, when looking at a Jacob Chychrun, yes, he's healthy this year, but that guy has dealt with injuries throughout his career basically every single season. Sergachev, you could argue for him. Now, obviously, he just snapped his leg, unfortunately, last night, and his defensive play just really has never wowed me. He's a good offensive defenseman, but I don't think his defensive shortcomings just far outweigh that. So I would go with Philip Hronek at this number 10 spot. And when it comes to the Colorado Avalanche, obviously, in this 2016 redraft, they don't yet have a Cale Makar. They don't yet have a franchise defenseman, although I don't think Hronek really is a franchise defenseman, but he definitely would be their young defenseman of the future, assuming the redrafts also win how they win in 2017 and they don't end up getting Cale Makar. So I have Philip Hronek going 10th overall to the Colorado Avalanche. At number 9, the Canadiens initially took Sergachev, which they eventually obviously traded for Jonathan Drouin, but now I have them taking Patrik Laine. Patrik Laine, it's just really weird, man. In terms of just raw talent, I still think he could go 5th overall in this draft. But when looking at it, started off so fantastic, 36 goals in his rookie year. Then at 44, looked like him and Matthews were going to be the next generational goal scorers. Finished probably like top 6 all time in goals, but it really fell off after that. Since that second season, he has not passed the 30 goal mark or the 63 point mark in a single season. And obviously this year has been probably his most disappointing season yet. He had 9 points in 18 games before obviously multiple injuries, multiple week-to-week injuries, and now being in player assistance. I hope he bounces back well. But when you look at it, if he's not scoring goals, he's really not doing a lot for your team. So I do like the guys that I have ahead of him. Yes, he had a fantastic first 2 years, but he has not been able to stay healthy, doesn't offer much besides goal scoring, and has not even been an elite goal scorer in prior years. Yes, he has been hovering around point per game, but Patrik Laine going forward, I just have far too many concerns regarding his overall game and overall health. So I think number 9 spots in the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal Canadiens just would take the best player available at this spot, maybe bet on a Patrik Laine. So I have him going 9th, but I understand maybe if you would have him higher. These guys are only 26, so I still think about the overall timeline going forward, and I prefer the other guys that I put ahead of him. At 8th overall, the Buffalo Sabres took Alex Nylander, talking about the wrong Nylander brother. In this redraft, I have them going with Jesper Bratt. I know that, again, Patrik Laine was an immediate impact guy. People forget Bratt was a 6th-round pick, but he made the NHL in his second season. Was he this elite guy? But he was between a 40 to 50-point guy his first 3 seasons, was a very solid player. Then 2 years ago, broke out for 73 points, then had 73 points again with 32 goals, and this year has 52 points in 48 games. He is one of the most electric players in the entire league to watch in terms of his transitional play. Fantastic skater, very good hands. His shot has come a really long way since early on, and I think going forward, he's going to be a reliable point per game, probably 90, 95. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets 101 season playing with the Jack Hughes, but I think even with the Nico Hischier, a guy that is more so on his level, he would be putting up 85, 90 points. I think he is a top 50 player in the NHL, and when looking at the Buffalo Sabres in this spot, you form a pretty disgusting line, hopefully, assuming they don't trade those guys down the line, but of Sam Reinhart, Jack Eichel, and Jesper Bratt in terms of that future forward core. That would be absolutely disgusting. So I have them going Jesper Bratt at 8th overall. 7th overall, the Coyotes initially took Clayton Keller. I have them going with Alex DeBrincat. You can definitely make an argument for DeBrincat over a Clayton Keller or over the guy that I have at number 5, considering he was so goddamn good early on in his career. 3 out of his first 5 seasons, he put up 40 goal pace, but I do think you have to acknowledge the fact that he did play with Patrick Kane when Patrick Kane still was one of the best playmakers in the entire NHL. That is something that definitely has to be considered. If Alex DeBrincat went 7th overall in this redraft to an Arizona Coyotes, I don't think he's putting up 40 goal pace. I don't think that that's that controversial. But right now, at this point for Alex DeBrincat, I think we've kind of settled on what Alex DeBrincat is, which is a very good first liner, giving you around 30-ish goals, 40-ish assists. I think he'll probably hit 40 goals at least one time with the Detroit Red Wings. So he is a very, very good first liner. And when you look at the Arizona Coyotes, yes, they did flub a lot of picks during this time frame, but I think with him now, with like a Logan Cooley and a Michelli, that would be a very promising young-ish forward core for the Arizona Coyotes. So I have them going with Alex DeBrincat. 6th overall, Matt Tkachuk went in this spot. He's obviously going a bit higher. I have them taking Clayton Keller. Clayton Keller walked into the NHL at 19 years old and immediately put up 65 points on not that good of Arizona Coyotes teams. The next 2 seasons, he would struggle a little bit, but again, Arizona was not good at all. He was playing basically on his own. And then for the last 3 years, he's basically been around point per game on, again, not that good of Arizona teams. This guy has proved that he can drive his own line and be a very effective, one of the best not really goal scoring, but playmaking, as well as having a fantastic shot. He is very good. And if he goes to the Calgary Flames, playing with the Johnny Gaudreau on that power play, or even strength, maybe not because they're not similar players, but two smaller guys. But if he was on a Calgary Flames in 2017 and beyond, I think that he would be a point per game big guy basically off the rip on a far better team compared to the Arizona Coyotes. So I think it makes a lot of sense in this spot for the Flames to go with yet another winger in a guy like Clayton Keller. 5th overall was Olli Juolevi, unfortunately for the Canucks. I have them taking Tage Thompson, in part because they didn't have Elias Pettersson at this point, obviously, so they have to go with that center, get that guy in Tage Thompson. Although Tage Thompson wasn't an impact guy immediately, like an Alex DeBrincat and a Clayton Keller or a Patrick Laine or even a Bratt to a degree. Bratt was far better earlier on. I think if you're the Canucks, you need to lock up your franchise center, assuming you don't get Pettersson in the next year's redraft. You're not sure if you're going to get him. So when looking at Tage, he has obviously been fantastic basically for the last 3 years, a legit top 15 center in the entire NHL. So I think building around Tage Thompson and Brock Besser, that would be very promising for the Vancouver Canucks. Number 4, they initially went with Jesse Puljujarvi, did the Edmonton Oilers. I have them going with Charlie McAvoy. They get their franchise defenseman here. Obviously, Charlie McAvoy, right out of the rip in like 2017 was a 2018 was a half a point per game defensive lockdown guy. And his offense has come a long way. Now he puts up 65 to 70 points, as well as being fantastic defensively. Absolute force in terms of hitting and blocking shots. So when looking at the Edmonton Oilers, obviously if they could snatch their franchise defenseman here instead of yet another winger in Jesse Puljujarvi, which they were already pretty set in terms of their forward core, they get that franchise defenseman. And I think one really important thing that I thought of when projecting McAvoy to the Edmonton Oilers is not even just McAvoy being fantastic, because obviously he'd be their number 1 defenseman. They'd have a franchise Norris guy. I think over the last 4 years, they probably make a cup final with McAvoy as their number 1. But also, if they had a guy like McAvoy, a young franchise defenseman, they're not giving Darnell Nurse that 8-year, $9.25 million deal, which might be even more important than goddamn McAvoy's play. So he would have avoided that disaster if they ended up getting a Charlie McAvoy at 4th overall. 3rd overall, this might surprise some people considering I usually, as they say, glaze this guy, but I'm actually going going with Adam Fox to the Columbus Blue Jackets. They initially took PLD. When looking at this, I'm going to get into it more with Matthew Tkachuk, but Columbus Blue Jackets obviously take Adam Fox here. He is better than Charlie McAvoy. Basically, the last 3 out of the last 4 seasons, he's been a top 3 defenseman in the entire NHL this year. This year, I think he's been a top 3 defenseman. He just missed 12 games, so people are not giving him the respect that he nearly deserves. And even 2 years ago in 2022, he was still like 5th in the goddamn Norris voting. He is just such high hockey IQ, always in the right position. Might not be the amazing skater that a Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes is, but I think he really makes up with that in terms of his high IQ and positioning. So when looking at an Adam Fox going to a Columbus Blue Jackets, him and Zach Werenski, who they obviously took back in 2015, form maybe the best 1-2 punch in terms of defensemen in the entire NHL. Yes, at this time, they would have to find like a young center of the future. They did have Artemi Panarin back in 2016, I believe, or they had just traded for him. So Columbus would have a pretty promising young future in terms of drafting Adam Fox and just being set in terms of their defense score versus the last 3 or 4 years, their defense score has been pretty shit as Werenski has been obviously dealing with injuries. Second overall, Matthew Tkachuk to the Winnipeg Jets. They initially took Patrik Laine. And the main reason why I ended up going with Tkachuk over Adam Fox is Matthew Tkachuk walked into the league and was a very good second liner, maybe even first liner for 3 seasons. And even in his 4th season, when Adam Fox finally debuted, he was much better than Adam Fox. He was around 75-point pace. So when looking at it, those first 3 years when Adam Fox just wasn't even in the NHL, I think make up for the gap because I do think Adam Fox is a slightly better player. I think 3 years of getting a high-end guy that young immediately on a team like the Winnipeg Jets, who back in 2016 were still a pretty highly competitive team. They made the playoffs Laine's first year. So getting a guy like Matthew Tkachuk immediately to fill that role, and in terms of them being win now mode versus maybe a Columbus who were a pretty good team there, but maybe think about more about the future. I think it makes more sense for the Winnipeg Jets, who back in 2016 also did have Buff was still on the team back then, so they had their right-hand defenseman. Josh Morrissey was looking like a future stud, so instead, I think the Winnipeg Jets opt for Matthew Tkachuk, who has been fantastic in his own right. Last year was like the 2nd or 3rd best player in all of hockey, having a bit of a down year this year, but has been absolute fire of late. I think he's like 1.7 points per game in his last like 14 or 15 games. He's really caught fire yet again, proving he's one of the best players in the entire NHL. So I have Matthew Tkachuk going 2nd overall. And then at 1st overall, they initially took Austin Matthews. Still have them taking Austin Matthews. Not only is he obviously the best player right now, that might have been put in jeopardy last year with Tkachuk and Fox playing fantastic, him having a down year. He's the best player right now, no duh. Might put up 70 goddamn goals. But this guy walked into the NHL as well and put up 40 goals right out of the rip, was an elite, was one of the best goal scorers in the entire NHL, basically on day one. One of the greatest goal scorers of all time. And if you're Toronto, you're not taking Matthew Tkachuk, you're not taking Adam Fox. You are locking up Austin Matthews, who at this point looks like basically a Hall of Fame lock, potentially, in my opinion, going to be a top 50, even if he doesn't win a cup, player of all time, could potentially be top 30 of all time. You are sticking with Austin Matthews, and this is the final. Matthews, Tkachuk, Fox, McAvoy, Thompson, Keller, DeBrincat, Jesper Bratt, Patrik Laine, Philip Hronik. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? And I'll be seeing the next one.